To be a disciple, we've got to be able to follow. To be a disciple of Jesus, we've got to be able to follow in his footsteps. You know, there's an ancient legend about St. Peter. It became the basis of a famous novel and a motion picture, Quo Vadis. At the time of the great persecution under Nero, the Christians in Rome urged Peter to flee the city. They told him, "You're too valuable. You've got to get out of town. You've got to find a place of safety. Go somewhere else and preach the gospel there." So Peter took their words to heart. He hurried out of town as fast as he could. But as he went along what's called the Appian Way, that's the old Roman road that you can still find and is still in existence leading out of Rome, he was met by Christ, by Jesus. Jesus was walking into the city. And Peter said to him in Latin, "Quo vadis, Domine? Where are you going, Lord?" And then Jesus replied, "I'm going to Rome to be crucified with my people." "And where are you going, Peter?" Peter's eyes were filled with tears of remorse as he turned and walked back to Rome, where, according to tradition, he was crucified upside down with his head downward, because he felt he wasn't worthy to die in the same way that Jesus had died. Jesus' question to Peter comes to us also. Where are you going? Are we going with Christ? Are we walking with the Lord? Are we walking with Jesus? Or do we walk away from him? Do we refuse to take up the cross? It's one of those fundamental questions of our spiritual lives. And it doesn't matter how far that we've traveled. What makes the difference is what direction that we're going. Today, St. Peter in the Gospel takes Jesus aside. He says, "Oh, Lord, there's no way that you're going to be crucified, that you're going to have to die." And Peter gets this sharp rebuke from Jesus. Now just think, last week, you remember last week's Gospel? Jesus looks at Peter and says, "You're the rock, and I'm going to build my church upon this rock right here, upon you, Peter, upon your faith." And so this is like the next scene in the Gospel, basically. Peter's being said, "Oh, you're a stumbling block. You're an obstacle. You're Satan. Get behind me." So why was he so rebuked by Jesus? Well, first and foremost, because he's judging not by God's standards, he's judging by man's standards. And secondly, he's presuming to lead Jesus rather than follow him. Just think about it. He's presuming to lead Jesus rather than follow him. Following Jesus is not easy. It demands sacrifice. We've got to deny our very selves, Jesus says. We've got to daily take up our cross. And being a disciple of Jesus means that we measure ourselves by God's standards and not God and the church by our standards. And I think far too often that's the trap that we fall into. Paul tells us today, he says, "Don't conform yourselves to this age." And how often do we do that? Do we let the current culture, or even, God forbid, the mass media set our standards for us? The culture around us If you have a desire, you should fulfill it. If your marriage is difficult, well, get a divorce. If a child in your womb is an inconvenience, then abort it. We're called to walk a different path, the path of Jesus. It's a challenging path, but it is a path that ultimately leads to the fullness of life. Now, there's a powerful scene in Schindler's List that is a great movie. If you've never seen it, you should definitely watch it. At the very beginning of the story, this Czechoslovakian businessman, his name is Oskar Schindler, he builds a factory in occupied Poland, and he uses Jewish labor because in those tragic days, the Jewish labor was cheap. But as the war progresses, he learns what's really happening to the Jews under Adolf Hitler. And his motivations, you see this conversion in him, switch from profit to sympathy and compassion and empathy. He ultimately uses his factory as a refuge for Jews to protect them from the Nazis. And as a result of his efforts, more than 1,100 Jews were saved from death in the gas chambers. And you would think that at the end of it all, he would have been quite pleased with himself, very proud of himself. But in the movie, you see this scene where he stands in the midst of some of the Jews after the war is over. He's there in the midst of some of those that have been saved. And he breaks down in tears. He takes off his gold ring and says, "My God, I could have brought back 2 more people with this ring. Look at these shoes that I'm wearing. Easily at least 1 more person. This coat, probably 2 more. Even these cufflinks, at least 2 more." And there he stands. Not gloating, not saying, "Look at me and how great I am and how wonderful I am," but weeping with regret that he had not done more. And so I wonder if one day you and I, as disciples of Jesus, will not ask ourselves, could I have done more? Have I truly borne the cross of Jesus? Have I daily taken up that cross? Have I daily denied myself? Have I tried to love Jesus, love the church, love God, love my neighbor more than myself? Is our faith really, truly sacrificial? That self-sacrificing, merciful love that comes from Jesus? Does my love, my faith cost me something? In the light of this gospel, I want to talk to you a little bit about our stewardship here at St. Mary's. Last weekend, I handed out a financial report for the last fiscal year. Our fiscal year goes from July to June. So in last week's bulletin. If you weren't here, we'll have it up on the website. You can access the financial report from the website. You know, at St. Mary's, we have a history of self-sacrificing generosity, self-sacrifice for the good of others. There are men and women who, here at St. Mary's, who some of you who are sitting here right now, who have wholeheartedly said yes to taking up your cross and to follow in the way of Jesus. We have a tradition and a history of that at our parish here. You know, stewardship is an expression of our discipleship. You know, stewardship is about what God has given us and how we're called to use it. We don't just use it for ourselves. We are recipients and caretakers, stewards of God's good gifts. And if you read the Gospels, almost half of Jesus' parables are about stewardship. Everything that you and I have, everything that we are, has its ultimate source in God and His goodness. And so putting God first in our lives means putting God first in our financial decisions. So our report from this last fiscal year, because of especially because of what happened when we had to shut down our masses at the last quarter of our year, our collections were down. They were almost $50,000 less than they were last year. We collect about $1 million a year in donations, and just at the masses, and so we were about $50,000 short of that. Because we were able to cut down on our expenses in a lot of different ways. We were about $80,000 under budget, what we had budgeted for with our expenditures. But still, we were a little short when you look at the plus and the balances. But fortunately, we applied for that payroll protection plan. Churches were able to apply for that, and we did receive that. And so ultimately, we did have a surplus for the year, thanks be to God. But in the financial report, if you've got any questions about that, I'd be more than happy to answer your questions about that. The school had a small deficit because it also received the payroll protection plan money. Even though we were down to about 215 students, we had a deficit of just about a little bit over $4,000. This year, we were really concerned. There were a number of families that were not going to be able to attend the school because of COVID-related financial strains on their family. People moving out of the parish, moving out of the city, and so we thought we might be as low as 180 students, but we ended up right now, as of last Friday, we have 193 students, and so we're projecting and hopeful that we'll be close to breaking even this year. We've had to make some pretty radical cuts in our expenditures. We had to eliminate a teaching position. We had to eliminate a development director. We had to eliminate our cafeteria workers. We weren't able to use the cafeteria anyway, and we had to eliminate a couple of part-time days. We tightened our belts in every way possible. I really am grateful, very extremely grateful, and the families are so grateful to those of you that donated to our tuition relief angel program. We collected almost $60,000 for that program, and it's been a great help to some of the families that, again, didn't think they'd be able to attend the school because of COVID-related issues with their families. This year we were able to complete a number of different projects here. We, as part of our Building Our Faith in the Future program project, we had our gym repainted and refinished on the floor. We put in new basketball goals. We painted the whole inside of the gym. If you've not seen it, it looks really great. We look forward to playing volleyball and basketball in there this year. This year we contracted with a new cleaning company and a new maintenance company. Many of you know Bob Matoka, after about 10 years, retired. He retired in June, and we've hired a company called Maintenance that's doing our maintenance and also our cleaning of our whole campus. And so we're hoping that that's going to be a really good and fruitful decision, and we'll be able to save a little bit of money with them. We're looking forward to building our Faith and Future program to this next step, next stage of completion. I'm going to have some things to show you about where we're at with that in the next few weeks. We're actually now soliciting bids for the total cost of the project, and so the plans have been drawn up, and we've got hard plans for contractors to look at, and we can get solid bids. And so I'll tell you about that. We're going to be building a columbarium here on campus, and you'll hear more about that. So there's a lot of good, positive, wonderful things happening here, and they're happening because of your generosity and your faithfulness, your willingness to be to sacrifice for the good of others, for the good of the church. And so I'm deeply, deeply grateful for your generosity and your willingness to take up your cross each day, to follow in the footsteps of Jesus. If you have any questions about the financial report, I'll be happy to answer any kind of questions that you have. You can talk to me in person, you can call the office, you can email me. I'll be glad to answer any kind of questions in the best way possible.